for their response. If there's no further business, without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.
Thank you.
So, that was something, huh? No matter your opinion on UFOs and UAP, you have to admit that the hearing was, at the very least, an entertaining watch. I know, personally, that I haven't seen that much seriousness and notably bipartisanship between members of Congress in a long time. Which, it makes you wonder, what did I just witness? What you witnessed was not only just the beginning of future discussions on unidentified anomalous phenomena, but also history unfolding in real time. I'm here to help you be informed on what was discussed, what already has been discussed, the importance of the hearing, the implications of the witness statements, and to help you overall be better educated and less stigmatized when approaching the topic of UFOs. This topic is not solely about aliens. There is a technology in the sky worldwide that can outmaneuver international military aircraft, travel at speeds faster than any human could, use propulsion and energy methods far more advanced than anything humans have today, activate and deactivate nuclear missiles at will, travel through air, space, and sea, accelerate to incredible speeds instantaneously, be a threat to civilian and military flight and close contacts, be a threat to national security, and more. Not only this, but there is a supposed massive cover-up, disinformation campaign, possible murders, reverse engineering programs, recovered bodies, and a financial scandal that American taxpayers have been paying to keep secret for almost a century. If you have questions at any time during the video, please continue watching and keep your mind open. I will go over some common questions and skepticism near the end of the video, including these topics. If you have not watched the full hearing yet, please do so. This is vital to getting a firm understanding of the situation. And because I believe in transparency, the entirety of my script will be downloadable and viewable in the description, complete with links to sources. But before we dive into the hearing, let's get some things squared away first. Considering the United States government has been less than consistent with the naming of the subject, it's safe to say that there are some major miscommunications. It started with UFO, unidentified flying object, moving to UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, and then finally changing it one last time to, again, UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon. While UFO can technically classify many things in the skies, such as trash or weather phenomenon, it is known to most as the classic flying saucer and most other anomalous technologies. The reason for the name change is because of better specification and to include, quote, submerged and transmedium objects. Another important note to mention is that UAP does not necessarily mean aliens. There are many possible explanations to what is happening, and while some might hold more weight than others, everything, including aliens and extraterrestrials, should be held to the same standard. We, the public and scientific community, simply do not have enough data to conclude exactly what it is. This will be a key aspect of the hearing. That being said, UAP on their own are confirmed by the US government, as well as many other governments around the world, to be real. There are extremely advanced technologies flying in the sky that are unexplainable. That fact is undeniable.
And I'm actually being serious here, is that there's footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they move, their trajectory.
And the UFO phenomenon is real, although it's been covered up by our governments for quite a long time.
Whoa! This came to light in 2017 after years of pressure put on by people like former counterintelligence officer Luis Elizondo, the supposed director of a former secretive Pentagon program to study UAP, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence Christopher Mellon, and two award-winning journalists Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal. Since then, the stigma and taboo around UAP has begun to shrink slowly but surely. Many pieces of legislation have been passed through the annual National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, one of which was the UAP Disclosure Act. It is an amendment to the 2024 NDAA brought forward bipartisanly by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, the Democrat from New York, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Democrat from New York, Senator Martin Heinrich, Democrat from New Mexico, Mike Rounds, a Republican from South Dakota, Senator Todd Young, a Republican from Indiana, and Senator Marco Rubio, the Republican from Florida. It states that all records and materials of UAP and its occupants are now presumed to be disclosed immediately and in an expedited manner from the entire federal government, local governments, private contractors, the commercial industry, academia, etc. A new unidentified anomalous phenomena records collection is to be created at the National Archives. A review board is to be created that will determine which records from the archives should continue to be disclosed. This board will consist of at least a former or current national security official, a former or current foreign service official, a scientist or engineer, an economist, a professional historian, and a sociologist. These selected members cannot have conflicts of interest nor have been involved in any, quote, legacy programs. They will have all necessary security clearances and accesses. Quote, credible evidence and testimony, end quote, finds that records of UAP have not been declassified properly due to the Atomic Energy Act combined with a, quote, over-broad interpretation of transclassified foreign nuclear information. The Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, has been shown to be ineffective in providing transparency on the subject of UAP. There has been a lacking oversight on programs that study UAP in both the executive and legislative branches of the federal government. Disclosure of UAP information must happen in order to prevent, quote, potential technological surprise, end quote. The amendment also defines several words which will have a much more important meaning as we continue to the hearing. These words are non-human intelligence, quote, any sentient, intelligent, non-human life form, regardless of nature or ultimate origin, that may be presumed responsible for unidentified anomalous phenomena, or of which the federal government has become aware. Technologies of unknown origin, quote, any materials or metamaterials, ejecta, crash debris, mechanisms, machinery, equipment, assemblies or subassemblies, engineering models or processes, damaged or intact aerospace vehicles, and damaged or intact ocean to surface and undersea craft associated with unidentified anomalous phenomena, or incorporating science and technology lacks prosaic attribution or known means of human manufacture. Legacy Program. Quote, all federal, state, and local governments, commercial industries, academia, and private sector endeavors to collect, exploit, or reverse engineer technologies of unknown origin, or examine biological evidence of living or deceased non-human intelligence that predates the date of the enactment of this act. Close observer. Quote, anyone who has come into close proximity to unidentified anomalous phenomena or non-human intelligence. Finally, it defines UAP as well. They have these observables: instantaneous acceleration and absent apparent inertia, hypersonic velocities absent a thermal signature and sonic shockwave, transmedium, such as space-to-ground and air-to-undersea travel, positive lift contrary to known aerodynamic principles, multispectral signature control, physical or invasive biological effects to close observers and the environment. And they have been described by these terms: flying discs, flying saucers, unidentified aerial phenomena, unidentified flying objects, unidentified submerged objects. Keep in mind, this piece of legislation was drafted, presented, and signed off by the Senate far before David Grusch ever testified. We now know for a fact that David Grusch, first-hand witnesses, and current members of these legacy programs had been coming to the Senate and other oversight members for potentially years before this hearing was held. Now, let's get into the hearing. The three witnesses who testified under oath were as follows. Former commanding officer for the U.S. Navy's Black Aces, David Fravor, former F-18 U.S. Navy pilot Ryan Graves, and former 14-year reconnaissance intelligence officer, rank major for the United States Air Force and the UAP Task Force, David Grusch. The witnesses have extremely extensive backgrounds and experience in the military, the government, and are also highly credible. And, according to Representative Tim Burchett, one of 4 organizers in a team of bipartisan politicians for the hearing, there were actually supposed to be 3 more witnesses, who all backed out beforehand due to supposed intimidation by the Pentagon.
Witnesses that have backed out on us and have told us that they received inquiries, I guess you could say, from the Pentagon. And so if there isn't anything, then why the push to cover it up? Why don't we know? All we want is transparency.
The bipartisan nature of almost all who ask questions was something to be admired in the U.S. political system. If you've been keeping up with American politics, you probably know that division has plagued the country noticeably more since the 2016 election, and arguably earlier than that. Yet, in this hearing, in one of the most divided times in American history, it was unanimously serious about the topic, making sure not to blame one administration or the other. I'll let Representative Jeff Jackson, Democrat from North Carolina, explain it.
But on this day, the UAP day, the committee was almost totally nonpartisan. It was fascinating to see how members of both parties act when there's no clear partisan angle. Everyone was basically rational and respectful, even the members known for being pretty extreme. It was kinda great.
For example, AOC and Matt Gaetz in the same room asking similar questions and both being equally serious. In fact, the subject as a whole is extremely bipartisan. Here is a list of current representatives and senators who are interested and serious about the topic. I'm sure there are a few who are left out due to recent news. Let me know in the comments. That makes you wonder, what's the change? What do these politicians know about the subject that makes them straighten up, put down their party politics, and seem genuinely interested? The testimony from the pilots, first-hand witnesses of these technologically advanced craft, was hands down some of the most important statements made that day. Equally, it was also some of the least covered statements by the mainstream media, who tended to focus more on the sensational claims of aliens and recovered spacecraft. These are the same pilots and squadrons as the 3 videos released in 2017. Ryan Graves, who is now the executive director of the nonprofit Americans for Safe Aerospace, ASA, made very clear arguments for the safety of not only military pilots, but also commercial pilots as well. He claims that there needs to be a centralized reporting process for both military and civilian pilots, as the phenomenon presents a very clear danger for military pilots and civilian airlines alike.
As we convene here, UAP are in our airspace, but they are grossly underreported. These sightings are not rare or isolated, they are routine. There needs to be a location where this information is centralized for processing, and there needs to be a two-way communication loop so the operators on the front end have a feedback and can get best practices on how to process information, what to do, and to ensure that their reporting is being listened to. Right now, there is not a lot of back and forth.
He also claims that the stigma and taboo around this topic within the media, public, military establishment, and academia keeps research from being conducted.
The stigma attached to UAP is real and powerful and challenges national security. It silences commercial pilots who fear professional repercussions, discourages witnesses, and is only compounded by recent government claims questioning the credibility of eyewitness testimony. Right now, we need a system where pilots can report without fear of losing their jobs. There is a fear that the stigma associated with this topic is going to lead to professional repercussions, either through management or perhaps through their yearly physical check. So having a secure system, reducing the stigma, and making this information available through the public is going to reduce the concerns that aircrew have.
The most notable encounter that one of his squadron mates had was a, quote, black cube within a clear sphere. It came within 50 feet of crashing head-on with the aircraft, clearly posing a flight safety risk for any pilot in the air.
During a training mission in Warning Area Whiskey 72, 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, two F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP. The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft. The mission commander terminated the flight immediately and returned to base. Our squadron submitted a safety report, but there was no official acknowledgement of the incident and no further mechanism to report the sightings.
According to the preliminary assessment of UAP from the Department of National Intelligence, DNI, there have been a documented 11 instances of, quote, near misses from military pilots since 2004. And considering the stigma and taboo surrounding the topic, most pilots who do see or have these encounters never report it. Pilots who have seen things and reported them in the past have sometimes had their licenses revoked and their reputations tarnished, being labeled as unfit to fly or crazy. According to Graves, he estimates that around 95% of UAP sightings go unreported to the US government, leaving a major bias in data.
I would estimate we're somewhere near 5% reporting, perhaps.
So like 95% basically don't report seeing UAPs.
That's just my personal estimate.
With Graves' testimony, it is important to note that the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, otherwise known as AARO, has been under heavy scrutiny lately by not only the pilots and Grusch, but also politicians circling the topic. AARO, as of August 4th, 2023, does not have a public phone number, an email address, nor a website. The ways to report sightings to the, quote, focal point for UAP are extremely limited and confusing, which some claim to be purposeful in order to keep the cover-up in place by the Department of Defense. This is reinforced with the fact that the Department of Defense awarded Sancor, a company that specializes in whistleblower and leak prevention, with a $1.9 million award for, quote, AARO support services.
But do you need any authorities that you don't have to get the data?
There are
you
some
need?
authorities that we need. We currently are operating under Title X authorities, but we have, good relationships across the other agencies.
To follow up, Dr. Kirkpatrick, will you help us write that language so we can put it in the defense bill this year so that we know what authorities you need?
Mm-hmm. We can do that.
Thank you.
Is it possible there is some secret program that you're just not aware of?
I don't think so. I have access to anything and everything I need.
So far, whistleblowers have been reluctant to testify to the AARO office because it's part of the Department of Defense. They're afraid of retaliation. And what I've heard about those non-disclosure agreements is that because it was wartime, it had provisions that said, including if you disclose under penalty of death. And so the big worry is that people who sign non-disclosure agreements to work on any type of program for the military, that it had language in there that made them think that that was true.
Retired Commander David Fravor, arguably one of the most credible first-hand witnesses of these craft, gave his testimony of the Tic Tac craft that he and 3 other pilots from the USS Nimitz had witnessed off the coast of Southern California in 2004. There were calm seas, clear skies, and it was an almost perfect day. 2 aircraft, 2-seaters, were called out to intercept this unknown object.
The controller told us that these objects had been observed for over 2 weeks, coming down from over 80,000 feet, rapidly descending to 20,000 feet, hanging out for hours, and then going straight back up. As we looked around, we noticed that we saw some whitewater off our right side. All 4 of us, because we were in F-18Fs, so we had pilots and Wizzo in the back seat, looked down saw a white Tic Tac object with a longitudinal axis pointing north-south and moving very abruptly over the water like a ping pong ball. There were no rotors, no rotor wash, or any sign of visible control surfaces like wings. We proceeded around the circle about 90 degrees from the start of our descent, and the object suddenly shifted its longitudinal axis, aligned it with my aircraft, and began to climb. As we pulled nose onto the object, within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerated in front of us and disappeared. Our wingmen, roughly 8,000 feet above us, lost contact also. We immediately turned back to see where the whitewater was at, and it was gone also. So as you started to turn back towards the east, the controller came up and said, "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is at your cat point, roughly 60 miles away in less than a minute. You can calculate the speed." What you don't see is the radar tape that was never released, and we don't know where it's at, of the active jamming that the object put on an APG-73 radar. No one else talked to us, and I was in the top 20 in the battle group. No one came. The captain was aware, the admiral was aware, nothing was done. No, it was perfectly white, smooth, no windows, although when we did take the original FLIR video that is out there, when you put it on a big screen, it actually had two little objects that came out of the bottom of it. But other than that, no windows, no seams, no nothing.
Do you believe that you witnessed an additional object under the water in relation to your encounter?
I will say we did not see an object. There was something there to cause the whitewater, and when we turned around, it was gone, so there was something there that obviously moved. The Tic-Tac object we engaged in 2004 was far superior to anything that we had on time, have today, or are looking to develop in the next 10 years.
One of the most incredible aspects of this event is that it and the video was leaked on the internet a decade before the New York Times story broke. On February 4th, 2007, at 5:31 a.m., the online forum Above Top Secret had a post created by an account named The Final Theory. This thread contains the FLIR video, the overall Tic-Tac story, and a log of the ship's activities that day. The post was met with incredible hostility towards the original poster, but that wasn't the only place that the story was told. Over a decade ago, on the subreddit r/UFOs, another post was made by an account named Anon402 that detailed an account of the incident from one of the crew on the USS Nimitz. In this account, they go on to say that a group of individuals came on board the ship the next day and took all the footage from the incident. David Fravor, Ryan Graves, and David Grusch all agree that these objects could easily outmatch US Navy and Air Force jets, by decades at the very least, and that the pilots would be helpless if these objects were to be hostile.
Yeah, I concur with that. We have nothing that can stop in midair and go the other direction, nor do we have anything that can, like in our situation, come down from space, hang out for 3 hours, and go back up.
Yes, the objects that are being seen by commercial pilots are performing maneuvers that are unexplainable due to our current understanding of our technology and our capabilities as a country, and that applies for the military as well.
If the aircraft was armed, do you believe that your aircraft or any aircraft in possession of the United States could have shot the Tic-Tac down?
I'd say no. Just on the performance, it would just left in a split second.
Would you have had the capability to defend yourself, your crew, your aircraft?
Absolutely not.
Sir?
No.
Based off of the information that you've been privy to, is there any indication that these UAPs are interested in our nuclear technology and capabilities?
Yes.
By external observation, sure, that could be a fair assessment, yeah.
Yes.
They also all agree that there is an overclassification loophole with documents, photographs, and videos relating to UAP, specifically due to the Atomic Energy Act that makes releasing data on UAP to the public extremely difficult.
Things are overclassified. I know for a fact the video or the pictures that came out in the 2020 report that had the stuff off the East Coast, they were taken with an iPhone off the East Coast. A buddy of mine was one of the senior people there, and he said they were originally classified at TSSCI. And my question to him was, what's TSSCI about these? They're an iPhone literally off the vacapes. That's not TSSCI. So they're overclassified, and as soon as they do that, they go in a vault, and then you all have to look for them. And I would say, and I've told people that you have to know where to look. They're not going to divulge it to you because of the classification levels. But if you know where to look and who to talk to, which is exactly what Mr. Grusch can point you, then you have them.
They ask themselves, how come when a Russian jet shoots flares at one of our drones, we have perfect pictures and videos to show the American people and the world, but when it comes to UAPs, nothing.
I'll call it a lazy attitude about declassifying videos. I mean, I've seen some of the videos of the recent shoot down, and I saw no reason that couldn't have been released as long as they mask some data. The American people deserve to see that imagery and full motion video.
Now, on to the more sensational claims that require further investigation. David Grusch. He is a high-level intelligence officer with a very extensive and credible 14-year background and resume. He is part of an ongoing whistleblower reprisal investigation, with his lawyer, the original Intelligence Community Inspector General for the Obama administration, Chuck McCullough, one of the best lawyers in the United States and the world. Grusch was responsible for investigating special access programs for the UAP task force. He also helped draft the UAP amendments for the 2023 NDAA. When he attempted to access specific special access programs, he was denied, despite having the proper clearance, and faced unfair reprisals and potentially threats for his actions.
In 2019, the UAP Task Force Director asked me to identify all special access programs and controlled access programs, also known as SAPs and CAPs. At the time, due to my extensive executive level intelligence support duties, I was cleared to literally all relevant compartments and in a position of extreme trust, both in my military and civilian capacities. I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, to which I was denied access to those additional read-ons when I requested it.
He then decided to become a whistleblower. After filing a DOBSR request to ensure the public release of his testimony, he approached investigative journalists Ross Coulthart, George Knapp, and Jeremy Corbell. Grusch claims that parts of the U.S. government, along with other governments around the world, have legacy programs that reverse engineer crashed spacecraft from non-human intelligence.
Following concerning reports from multiple esteemed and credentialed current and former military and intelligence community individuals that the U.S. government is operating with secrecy above congressional oversight with regards to UAPs.
He has interviewed over 40 witnesses. For the past 4 years, witnesses have given both him and the Senate Intelligence Committee information, documents, photographs, etc. regarding these programs, including first-hand witnesses that are currently on the recovery program.
My testimony is based on information I've been given by individuals with a long-standing track record of legitimacy and service to this country, many of whom also have shared compelling evidence in the form of photography, official documentation, and classified oral testimonies. I actually had the people with the first-hand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General.
Not only this, but from these recovery operations, he claims that they have discovered non-human biologics and dead pilots at crash sites.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
Grusch claims that he and others have been threatened with reprisals to their careers.
I do have knowledge of active planned reprisal activity against myself and other colleagues, and it's very, very upsetting to me.
Coming from where?
Certain senior leadership at previous agencies I was associated with. Yeah, there were certain colleagues of mine that were brutally administratively attacked, and it actually makes me very upset as a leader to see that happen to other coworkers and actually superiors of mine over the last 3 years. I call it administrative terrorism. That's their quiver, their tool in the toolbox to silence people, especially the career government service cares about their career, cares about their clearance, their reputation to climb the ladder, and when you threaten that career path, a lot of people back off.
In the last couple of years, have you had incidences that have caused you to be in fear for your life for addressing these issues?
Yes, personally. Okay. Yeah. It was very brutal and very unfortunate, some of the tactics they used to hurt me both professionally and personally, to be quite frank. Yeah.
Actually, do you have any personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology?
Yes, personally.
Have anyone been murdered that you would that you know of or have heard of, I guess?
I have to be careful asking that question. I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities.
He also claims that private defense contractors are using the Independent Research and Development System, or IRAD, to keep these technologies in the private sector to avoid oversight, using misappropriated funds that should be going to other programs.
How does a program like that get funded?
I will give you generalities. I can get very specific in a closed session, but misappropriation of funds and
Does that mean
self-fund.
that there is money in the budget that is said to go to a program, but it doesn't, and it goes to something else?
Yes, I have specific knowledge of that. Yep.
Do you think U.S. corporations are overcharging for certain tech they're selling to the U.S. government, and that additional money is going to programs?
Correct, through something called IRAD. Certainly the contractors, or the metal benders, so to speak, they're the ones actually doing specific performance on government contracts.
He has the names, locations, photographs, documents, and more to back his claims, and has given it to the current Intelligence Community Inspector General, who has stated that it is, quote, credible and urgent. He is willing to give this information to House representatives in a sensitive, compartmented information facility, or a SCIF.
For the record, if you were me, where would you look?
I'd be happy to give you that in a closed environment. I can tell you specifically.
He also attempted to contact Arrow about this. However, according to Grusch, they have not gotten back to him.
You also stated that you had, in your interview, that you had briefed him on information that you were uncovering, but that he did not follow up with you. Were the items that you divulged to him pertinent to national security?
Yes, him and I had a classified conversation in April 2022 before he took over Arrow in July 2022, and I provided him some concerns I had.
It is worth mentioning that since the hearing, Arrow head Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick has issued a statement via his LinkedIn profile, stating that the hearing was an insult to Arrow and that Grusch has not gotten into contact with him. At this point, now we must consider that either someone is lying or there are very large miscommunication issues occurring which require addressing. Hey there. I'm in the middle of editing the video, but things have been happening since. On August 8, 2023, David Grusch released a statement through Ross Coulthart claiming that an online publication called The Intercept would be releasing an article that attempted to smear him because of 2 incidents relating to his PTSD from Afghanistan. Ross Coulthart then went on to News Nation to claim that there had been a leak from the intelligence community and DoD of David Grusch's, quote, medical records, as he had contacted the Virginia County Sheriff's Office to see if any information had been requested via FOIA.
But Dave has checked today because he assumed that the journalist had done his homework and just asked the local sheriff for the files. The sheriff has confirmed it did not come from him. The only other place that had this information is the intelligence community.
The next day, the Intercept article was published, titled UFO Whistleblower Kept Security Clearance After Psychiatric Detention. The article states that David Grusch was suicidal, attended an inpatient center for PTSD treatment, and argued that his past alcoholism and mental health issues means he is an uncredible and untrustworthy witness. The fact that the author, Ken Klippenstein, is attempting to use an Afghanistan veteran's PTSD and treatment to discredit him is nothing less than disgusting. He went on to say that he actually gained this information through the sheriff's station FOIA, and called Ross Coulthart's claim of a leak, quote, misinformed media coverage. Later that same night, Ken Klippenstein would go onto a Twitter space with John Greenwald, known for his extensive FOIA requests and his website, The Black Vault. When asked about what sparked him to go to the specific sheriff's station, Ken said that he was actually pointed in that direction by rank-and-file intelligence officials.
No, I knew people in the area, and so it was like I was getting bits and pieces from different people about stuff that they were saying. And so they were kind of like, look into his. They gave me, you know how people, the intel people, they're vague. They'll be like, look into his background, and they were kind of hinting that it's like,
This gives credence to Grusch's claims of whistleblower retaliation, as it seemed possible that officials who reprised Grusch gave Klippenstein dirt on him in an attempt to tarnish his credibility and testimony. Klippenstein even acknowledges that this could be the case.
I mean, I guess if you want to say that it was planted because I was talking to people and getting that rough impression of what he was like, I guess that's true.
He continued on in an interview with Breaking Points the following day, and further confirmed what he said in the space, now including the DoD.
Both. Yeah. Okay. So there's been a lot of back and forth. Grusch accused you of getting these things leaked by the intelligence community. You revealed it came from the Freedom of Information Act. You did a Twitter space last night. You indicated you were tipped off by this. So were you tipped off by members of the intelligence community?
It was both the Defense Department. I mean, again, it's a mosaic. You talk to as many people as you can because you don't want to be dependent on any one individual who might have a grudge or whatever it is. But yes, I did talk to both DoD people and intelligence people.
This story has faults on both sides. Were Grusch's medical records leaked? No. However, was the DoD and intelligence community involved with the story and tip? Absolutely. And that fact alone gives Grusch more credibility to his claims of whistleblower retaliation. In a short and sweet way, the main takeaway from the hearing is that there is an overclassification of records regarding UAP, and they pose a threat to national security. The US government and other governments, UK, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, etc., know more about UAP, and a combination of stigmatization, overclassification, lack of oversight, and monetary scandals are associated. Something needs to be done, and Congress needs to take action. In a longer way, the United States government and governments around the world, the Five Eyes Alliance, have been covering up crashed non-human technology and bodies behind iron veils in order to advance military technologies and to, hopefully, reverse engineer a working vehicle. This has been happening since the 1930s, with the first reported recovery happening after the fall of Mussolini in Italy. These vehicles are better than anything humanity has created, or will create for 100+ years. They appear to use anti-gravity technology and can defy our current understanding of physics and inertial force. Not only this, but they can fly in space, the air, and the ocean at their discretion, and can disable certain military radar systems and nuclear weapons. This technology could be released to the public in order to better the world. However, the fear for national security and international dominance is too high, specifically at the start of the Cold War. In order to keep the secret, the DoD, Air Force, and possibly an international alliance have an extensive disinformation campaign in order to smear, harass, threaten, and potentially murder those who speak out about the program. They also tried to minimize public interest in the topic, leak misleading and false information, and potentially bribe specific people to speak out against the subject. To fund the reverse engineering and disinformation operations, they have been misappropriating taxpayer money from the US government, and possibly others. This money should go to on-the-books defense operations and other expenses. Instead, it goes to these off-the-books legacy programs. To stop information from spreading using the Freedom of Information Act and evade oversight, they have placed some, if not all of these technologies into private defense contractors using the IRAD system. These contractors have been named, and the location of these high-level facilities have been given to the ICIG by David Grusch. These defense contractors could possibly be Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, and others. These high-level locations could possibly be Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, specifically a hangar located next to Bass Lake Lodge, Eglin Air Force Base, Area 51, and other possibly underground facilities hidden in plain sight, with the potential of them being anywhere in the world. That is, if you believe the whistleblower and pilot's testimonies. So, there are a few possible explanations. Either David Grusch and dozens of other high-ranking witnesses are A. all lying directly to Congress, intelligence committees, and the American public for motives yet to be seen, a direct psyop. B. all being lied to by higher-ups to confuse the American public, again for motives yet to be seen, an indirect psyop. C. all telling the truth for governmental transparency and safety. Or D. something else. Healthy skepticism should always be welcome, and in fact should be the standard. Currently, most UAP are easily identifiable and easily explainable things. Trash, weather phenomenon, balloons, drones, planes, birds, etc. However, just because this is true now does not mean we should disregard the smaller percentage of truly anomalous cases. Again, UAP on their own are confirmed to exist. That has frightening national security concerns and is intriguing in its own right. But because of the stigmatization and lack of reporting on the issue, there are still some who wholeheartedly believe that there is nothing to UAP, and who will go out of their way to publicly ridicule witnesses, whistleblowers, and the subject, both directly and indirectly. This line of thinking is something called denialism. It's the irrational idea that something does not exist or did not happen, regardless of what facts or information is presented. This has been seen time and time again with, ironically, many conspiracy theorists. Here are some common examples of the taboo and stigma at play. Let me preface this part by saying the following. This is not an attack on any of these people in any way, shape, or form. I discourage anyone from engaging in any form of hostility towards them. The purpose of this is to show examples of denialism and its effects.
Again, no indication of aliens or extraterrestrial activity with these recent takedowns. I'm not.
A lot of that could quite literally be explained with one simple thing, which is carbon monoxide poisoning. Check if their homes have the fire alarm beeping. You know what I mean? Lead poisoning is another one, but they just accidentally get caught by some of the weirdest guys, by the way. It's almost always a dude who is just out of his fucking mind, okay, in every other aspect of his life. Rarely like a normal guy.
With all the lights, and it was spinning, and it just and took off, and everything happened in less than 5 seconds, and we all looked at each other, was like, and I know that it was a UFO. I don't care what anybody says.
You never told anybody about that?
Nope, you're the first person I told, because I don't want people to think I'm crazy. But
Right.
In states where there's a higher involvement in the occult, you see a higher incidence of these close encounters with UFOs.
Unfortunately, behavior like this did not simply stem from a vacuum. The United States program Project Blue Book from 1952, which publicly stated to study UFO sightings at the time, was in actuality a tool by the US government to suppress witnesses and explain away sightings, even if there was no actual explanation. From the chief scientific advisor of Project Blue Book and known skeptic himself, J. Allen Hynek, the Air Force wouldn't give UFOs the chance of existing, even if they were flying up and down the street in broad daylight. Everything had to have an explanation. The caliber of witnesses began to trouble me. Quite a few instances were reported by military pilots, for example, and I knew them to be fairly well trained. So this is when I first began to think that, well, maybe there was something to all this. Blue Book, after a number of years, dropped the public's opinion on UFOs through the floor, as more and more attempts to discredit the topic and those involved were made with each decade. This, too, is part of Grusch's testimony and his claims of a, quote, disinformation campaign.
Do you have any information that the U.S. government is involved in a disinformation campaign to deny the existence of certain UAPs?
I can't go beyond what I've already stated publicly in my News Nation interview because it touches other sensitivities.
Again, from J. Allen Hynek, ridicule is not part of the scientific method, and the public should not be taught that it is. Unfortunately, many in the online UFO community jump to conclusions much too fast. This not only gives the community a bad name, but it also allows hoaxes to spread. It should be noted, however, that most times, hoaxes are spotted almost immediately and called out. Regardless, this does not negate the hundreds of sightings reported every year by civilian and military pilots. And while there are genuine crazies out there, see the Heaven's Gate cult, those people exist in every subject. So, I will now be going over some general questions, concerns, and opinions regarding the topic in order to clarify specific argumentative points, misrepresented information, etc. Please note, usually this is done by people who have never watched the hearing fully, nor have done any research into the subject recently. The US government, military complex, would never do such heinous acts that are being accused. Oh boy. You're in for a surprise. The military, and specific three-letter organizations, have been responsible for some of the most insanely disturbing and deadly acts in human history. Not only just the US of A either. Russia, China, Japan, Europe, etc. are all responsible for some very, very, very disturbing things done against their own people. In modern times, too. A good list of confirmed operations and events include Iran-Contra and the cocaine affair, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, Waco, Texas, MK-Ultra, Operation Northwoods, Operation Paperclip and the Manhattan Project, Operation Mockingbird, the NSA, Patriot Act, and illegal surveillance, memetic warfare, Russian officials falling out of windows, Japan's comfort women, Japan's Unit 731, and many, 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 many more. Of course, this isn't to say never listen to the government. Most, if not all of these programs were brought upon by the military-industrial complex and other organizations like the CIA or FBI. But, if you take a look at history, why couldn't the same thing be happening today? Well, I don't believe the government anyways. This is a psyop. While that's a completely understandable argument to have, there are some major flaws. First off, who is the government? Most people's interpretation of the government is completely different from one another's. Just to be clear, the two pilots and David Grusch are not the government. They are retired private citizens, and only David Grusch has worked within an intelligence department. This common misconception has led to the common headline, "The government said aliens are real." That is simply not true. That is the whistleblower David Grusch's claims. While they still have merit, he is not the government. Couldn't it just be Russia, China, or another nation or individual? Yes, it very well could be. No option should be taken off the table. However, the idea that an unknown country or individual could be using technology that outmatches any military on the planet is frightening, to say the least. If a country has this extraordinary tech that could help fix worldwide issues right now and is keeping it secret, that too is an issue. Finally, with the testimony from the witnesses and whistleblower, the idea that this is any country on Earth slowly whittles away. These craft outstrip the US military, one of the most advanced and the most funded military in the world. It's extremely unlikely that any country has made such a leap of advancement in such short time. Occam's razor tells us that the simplest solution is likely the correct one. While still very important to our society, there are times where the simplest answer is not the case. In fact, there are many instances where this is not true. Look at any part of quantum physics or mathematics if you need proving. Aliens would be way too smart to accidentally crash these insanely advanced ships. All in all, accidents happen. Even our bravest and most trained pilots crash their aircraft every once in a while. Same with the average individual. Most people get into a car accident at least once in their lifetime, and sometimes it's not your fault. With this in mind, one cannot simply dismiss away the idea that crashes have happened. At the very least, investigation is needed. Why can't Grusch say more? Where's the extraordinary evidence? David Grusch is one of the most cleared and top-ranking individuals in the entire United States government. His security clearance is rarely matched. If he were to slip up and say something that was even remotely classified, he would wind up in federal prison. Not only is that illegal, but it is an insane breach of national security. As for the evidence, one must ask a question. What is evidence? Like the term the government, evidence is also a term that can fit different descriptions based upon the person you are talking to. For some people, evidence is a photograph or video or document. For others, they need to be able to touch or see the evidence with their own eyes. And for some, no evidence is good enough. No matter who comes forward, no matter in what situation, no matter how credible, they will simply deny, even when the truth is staring right at them. Regarding David Grusch, it's not that he doesn't have evidence, it's that he can't just go out and show the public. Again, prison sentence. Additionally, he has stated that he testified to intelligence committees about his findings for 11 hours in closed-door meetings. That's quite a bit of time. He is eager to share this information with Congress. Every question he couldn't answer publicly, he stated that he could in a skiff. Finally, it is confirmed by Congress that, quote, credible evidence exists and has been presented to the Senate. This comes from the recent UAP Disclosure Act, as I've mentioned previously. It states this in Section 2. Legislation is necessary because credible evidence and testimony indicates that federal government unidentified anomalous phenomenon records exist and have not been declassified or subject to mandatory declassification review. This not only proves that there is more to the claims of David Grusch, but that evidence exists. It's simply far too classified at the moment for the public to see it. The UAP Disclosure Act aims to declassify documents and information that is overly classified, so that the public can see it. You can't see evidence right now, but it still exists regardless. Why isn't his testimony classified? When he filed a DOPSR request to get clearance on what he can and cannot say, he was prepared to sue the intelligence community if they denied his request outright. His idea was that if they went to court, then the act of discovery would ensue, leading to the information getting out either way. Additionally, due to the 2023 NDAA passed by Congress, whistleblower protections were strengthened for any personnel who wanted to come forward with information regarding UAP. Grusch also pursued this avenue, as he has stated that there is an, quote, active whistleblower investigation in progress due to the reprisals that he received for investigating this issue.
I have to be careful what I say in detail because there is an open whistleblower reprisal investigation on my behalf, and I don't want to compromise that investigation by providing anything that may help provide somebody information. But
if this is such a big secret, why hasn't this come out sooner? The fact is, there have been reports of legacy programs and reverse engineering attempts for decades. Whispers of operations like Majestic 12, Zodiac, Project Aquarius, etc. have existed nearly forever. It was never a matter of them not existing. It was a matter of the public believing, and an official of such high caliber. That is the power of a negative stigma associated to the topic. As an addendum to this question, some might be wondering, why do these supposed UAP and NHI seem very similar to common tropes found in sci-fi stories and entertainment? The simple answer is this. It is entirely possible that real accounts of UAP and NHI is what sparked specific stories, movies, shows, etc. For example, Steven Spielberg's Independence Day effectively hits the nail on the head of what is happening today, but sensationalized for entertainment. A plot of DoD secrecy, money siphoning and misappropriation, etc. So, it's not the idea that people are making these claims with biases towards Hollywood, but rather the opposite. Hollywood has a bias towards these perpetuated claims, which, up until recently, had no proper grounding. Grusch is lying. Let me remind you that lying under oath can land you in prison. And while yes, it would be hard to prove that he was actually lying, and people are reported to lie under oath regularly, it is nevertheless still a major risk for not only himself, but his family as well. Furthermore, what would be the motive? It isn't for political motivations, and it isn't to push his career forward, so just for fun? Fame? Is that really the simplest solution? At a certain point, the idea that dozens, if not hundreds of people have all claimed the same thing, including congressmen and women, past and present, presidents, etc., are all lying or have been lied to, is equally as important as the implications of UAP. Bottom line, even with this argument, someone is lying, and no matter who it is, it deserves an investigation. While radar glitches are certainly possible, the fact is some of these UAP are captured by multiple sensors and eyesight. Having 3 to 4 sensors and human eyesight fail all at the same time would be an extremely rare occurrence, especially to happen numerous times to trained pilots and personnel working on the most advanced systems. Why is this only happening in America? The fact is, it isn't. There have been governments all over the world who have their own UFO reports from previous years, and they each come to a similar conclusion. The topic needs more research. Some, but certainly not all, examples include Brazil, New Zealand, the UK, Australia, Canada, and more. This is all a distraction. There are better things we could spend our money on. This is one of the most purported gotchas out there regarding the hearing right now. Based on all the testimony given under oath, the knowledge that credible evidence exists, the fact that this topic is being taken seriously and bipartisanly by many big names in Congress, there is a little to none chance that this entire thing is a distraction and isn't real. And to add to that, what is it distracting from? As I've stated already, this tech could absolutely help climate change, the energy crisis, medical technologies, transportation, and overall improve the well-being of the entire world and individual. So, what is it distracting from? The Hunter Biden case? The 3+ Trump indictments? You can't have it be distracting from both. I would even argue to say that with the current testimonies and evidence provided, saying that some secretive Illuminati-like organization that can pull extremely complex strings, bribe people, all to create a fake distraction of a distraction that has lasted for the past 7+ years is crazier than believing that we have alien bodies and reverse-engineered tech. Additionally, the idea that we as humans and a government can't focus on multiple issues at the same time is honestly insulting to our species. If that was the case, we would still be in the Stone Age. You can care about this topic just as equally as you care about civil rights, body autonomy, and other political and societal topics. Finally, you are correct. There are far better things we could be spending our money on besides unchecked military spending. Here is a graph of the spending of the United States from 2021 split up into categories, excluding earned benefits programs like healthcare and Social Security. I'll give you a second to figure out what the biggest chunk is. Final answer? That's right, at 47%, totaling $752 billion. It's military spending. Energy and environment at 3%? Nah, that can't be important, right? Education at only 10%? Food and agriculture at a mere 1%? It's an endless drain that our taxpayer money funnels into each and every year. And the Pentagon, for whatever reason, feels as if they do not have to answer to even Congress. Forget aliens, and even forget UAP. That deserves an investigation. And if UAP and aliens come to light from that, then so be it. I still have rent due. Why does this matter to me? Grusch is not suggesting that every person should spend all their time on the topic. He and the pilots simply want it to be investigated by Congress and oversight committees. Think for a second about a new form of energy that is extremely compact, extremely effective, and could create new opportunities for jobs and a new future for the world. New medical devices, new forms of circuitry, faster computers, anti-gravity transportation, cheaper food and groceries, no more need for gas. Now imagine that this technology has existed for almost a century now, and could have very well been released in order to help benefit society and prevent things like climate change, but instead was locked away for the war machine and corporate greed. The insane amount of spending that the US military does annually that supposedly goes towards these programs is astronomical. Unfortunately, investigations into this haven't been done before due to the stigmatization and lack of public interest. Again, supposedly because of the active disinformation campaign, also being paid for by your taxpayer dollars. So, there must be observable public interest in the topic in order for senators and representatives to really put their foot on the gas with this issue. Otherwise, it may fall back into obscurity. So, what now? If you've made it to the end of this video, I can only guess that you're intrigued. Despite this extensive video, I still encourage you to watch the full, unedited hearing yourself. Hopefully, you now understand the implications and the importance of the hearing, and the topic in general. Unfortunately for the public, right now we still don't truly know what is going on. Most, if not all, hard-hitting, extraordinary evidence is still classified. What we do know, however, is that UAP exist. Their origin is yet to be discovered, but the bottom line is that they exist. Full stop. With the recent UAP Disclosure Act, however, answers may be closer than they appear. Within the next 3 years, I expect many new documents and information to come to light about the subject. Things will happen behind the scenes, whistleblowers will continue to give testimony, and public hearings will also continue. Even if you are still not convinced, time will tell. If you are a pilot who sees something in the air, do not hesitate to contact Americans for Safe Aerospace, or better yet, a representative in Congress. If you are a whistleblower with documents, photographs, testimony, or any kind of information relating to UAP, I urge you to contact Americans for Safe Aerospace, representatives in Congress, or even investigative journalists like Ross Coulthart or George Knapp, to see how you should proceed. While it may be a daunting task, there is safety in numbers, and with the recent whistleblower protections, it is getting safer and safer to come forward. If you are an average citizen and want to make a difference, the way that you can do that is to contact your representatives. Tell them that you want this investigated. Furthermore, tell friends, co-workers, family. And while some may laugh or call you crazy, at least you know why this isn't a laughing matter, and can help explain the importance. That was a lot of information. Just a reminder that my entire script is downloadable and viewable in the description, complete with sources and fact-check information. Maybe even with some cut content too at the bottom. And with that, signing off. Goodbye for now.